Please subscribe, like, and share. It really helps us out. And of course, if you have any questions, comment below and we will answer you as soon as we can. Welcome to our series on IGCSE English as a second language exam preparation. In today's video, we are going to be talking about these funny symbols to help in punctuating sentences.
Using punctuation effectively means that your reader can make sense of your writing. It can also help create dramatic effects in your writing. Sentences should begin with a capital letter and end with a full stop, an exclamation mark, or a question mark. Let's look at full stops first. Full stops are essential to separate sentences. Next is an example of a piece of writing where the full stops are missing. When you read it out loud, you will notice that it doesn't quite make sense. You might find that to make it easier to read, you naturally insert pauses where full stops should be. This is an old city. There are buildings that were constructed many hundreds of years ago. One, hidden down behind the steps in the main square, was built in the 11th century. It is hard to imagine how many feet have walked across its floors, how many hands have opened its doors from its rooftops. Ugly gargoyles snarl at passers-by. The building is theirs, they seem to say. We are all newcomers here.
Here it is again with full stops added.
This is an old city. There are buildings that were constructed many hundreds of years ago. One, hidden down behind the steps in the main square, was built in the 11th century. It is hard to imagine how many feet have walked across its floors, how many hands have opened its doors. From its rooftops, ugly gargoyles snarl at passers-by. The building is theirs, they seem to say. We are all newcomers here.
Notice how the piece has more shape with the full stops included. It is easier to read and understand. Next, let's look at exclamation marks. Sentences can also finish with exclamation marks. These change the tone of a sentence, adding emphasis, suggesting that it is shouted, or that the statement itself is outrageous. For example, he ran up the hill. It was enormous. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. He was 700 years old. Wait, he said. Please. Use exclamation marks sparingly, and avoid the temptation to add more than one to the end of a sentence.
Next, we can look at question marks. An interrogative sentence is one that asks a question. This sort of sentence is indicated by a question mark. For example, where do you live? What is the square root of 49? Having read the manifestos of all the political parties, which way will you vote? Now, let's look at commas. Commas are used to separate words in a list and clauses in a sentence. Here are some examples of commas in lists. Her bag contained climbing shoes, rope, carabiners, chalk and a map. He had walked through the mountains in Wales, Scotland, Norway, Turkey, and Greece. She loved dancing, paragliding, reading, yoga and singing. It must be noted that if you use a list of adjectives to describe something, the last one does not use a comma. For example, he was a grumpy, old, small-minded man. It was a blue-skied, wide-open, beautiful day. In a complex sentence, use commas to separate the main and subordinate clauses. For example, Jones runs the bakery, which is on Main Street. Sam Haskins, who broke his leg in a car accident, still managed to pass all his exams.
Continuing with commas, let's move on to sentence separation and comma splicing. A common mistake in writing is to place a comma where in fact a full stop is needed. This misuse of the comma creates what is called a comma splice. Aim to avoid comma splices in your writing. Proofread your work carefully and make sure you have put a full stop instead of a comma at the end of each sentence. For example, the room filled with smoke, I froze in panic. This is an example of a comma splice. The comma in the middle should not be there because each half is a complete sentence in its own right. So, in fact, the writer should have used two full sentences, each ending with a full stop. This would make for two short, lively sentences. The room filled with smoke. I froze in panic. Alternatively, a connective could connect these two sentences. The room filled with smoke and I froze in panic. Or, as these two sentences are closely linked, a semicolon would also work. The room filled with smoke, I froze in panic.
Next, we are going to look at apostrophes. Apostrophes are used to signal two things to a reader. Possession, apostrophe plus an S. Omission, replaces a letter or letters in a word or words. Firstly, let's look at possession. This is when one thing belongs to another. The apostrophe plus an S shows ownership. For example, the boy's shoes were left outside the door. Or, the dog's paws were dirty. If the possessive noun is plural and ends in an S already, then an apostrophe is placed at the end of the word, but there is no need for the extra S. For example, the boys', not boys', shoes were outside the door. Or, the dog's, not dogs', paws were dirty.
Work out where to put the apostrophe by thinking about what belongs to whom. The boy's shoes were left outside the door. The shoes belonging to the boy were left outside the door. Or, the boy's shoes were left outside the door. The shoes belonging to the boys were left outside the door. With singular nouns that end in an S, you can either add an apostrophe alone to show possession, or you can add an apostrophe plus an S. Both are correct, but you should be consistent. For example, Mr. Jones's clock has stopped. Or, Mr. Jones's clock has stopped. The class's homework was due. Or, the class homework was due. Now, let's look at omission. This is when we miss out letters from words to shorten them, forming a contraction. For example, do not becomes don't. Could not becomes couldn't. And cannot becomes can't. Sometimes the contraction is irregular. Will not is irregular and becomes won't. Now let's look at its and its. Its, without an apostrophe, shows a relationship of possession. For example, its fur is smooth and shiny. The sun has got its hat on. The dog chased its tail. Its uses an apostrophe to show contraction. Its is short for it is, or sometimes it has. For example, it's almost home time. Is equal to, it is almost home time. It's got a lot of errors in it. Is equal to, it has got a lot of errors in it.
Next, round brackets. These are used to add extra information. Charles, never Charlie or Chad, was a serious young man. Sandy's pet dog, she detested cats, was 15 years old. If you are using brackets towards the end of a sentence, the full stop to complete the sentence goes outside of the brackets. Narika wore the blue shoes, her sister, Amrita, had already chosen the red ones. Now we turn to more sophisticated punctuation. 3 dots in a row are called an ellipsis and can be used to signify that part of a sentence is missing. It is mainly useful in dialogue. For example, I wonder, said Harry. The ellipsis suggests that Harry is thinking of something else. Ellipsis can be used in the main body of your writing, where it also signifies an unfinished sentence. For example, he wondered when the train would arrive. He had to be in Basingstoke by 4 p.m. or else. In this example, the ellipsis leaves the reader to imagine the consequences. Like exclamation marks, ellipses should be used sparingly. In general, it is better to finish your sentences as this makes for more coherent writing. Next, let's learn about the colon. A colon is used to introduce an item or a list of items. For example, Gemma has 2 favorite friends, Chloe and Zach. There was only one mountain left for her to tackle, Everest. Now, the semicolon. This is used for linking related clauses. Use the semicolon to link two independent clauses that are connected in meaning. For example, I can't go out tonight, I have lots of homework. This could equally be written as I can't go out tonight, I have lots of homework. Or I can't go out tonight because I have lots of homework. The semicolon can be used because the two clauses are closely related. Here is another example. Bath is a beautiful city, the architecture is stunning and the shops are diverse. We can also use it for separating a list. Where a list consists of a series of phrases, a semicolon helps the reader to group information. For example, the guests arrived at the party: Mr. Jones, from Cardiff; Asha Ali, from Manchester; Ms. Cohen, from Hull. In order to make a cake, you'll need a large mixing bowl, finely milled flour, softened butter, castor sugar and eggs, a good strong arm to stir it all together.
Things to remember: take special care over using commas. Check whether a full stop or semicolon would be more effective. Avoid excessive use of exclamation marks. Be ambitious, practice using sophisticated punctuation such as semicolons and colons. Proofread your work carefully. Thank you for watching our video. Please like, subscribe and share. And comment below so we can clarify things for you.